Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom. And in this video, we're going to look at what I'm going to be covering in November of 2021. So, in the United States, November is the first major holiday month of the holiday season. Halloween is over, and now everybody's going shopping and going crazy and planning on getting fat before January comes and everybody has to work on being healthy again. But more specifically, it's the month of the American Thanksgiving, which is the fourth Thursday of November. Yes, it's important. Yes, there was fights over it, and no, it wasn't actually finalized until like 56. And yes, it has something to do with shopping. But on top of this, it's also a month that's typically we celebrate the Native Americans, as we call them in the United States. We used to call them Indians. In fact, they are still occasionally called American Indians. In Canada, they are called the First Nations people. So this month, I'm going to be covering not only some children's books, I'm picking specific young kids' picture books that are looking at grade range between 0, because I do cover a board book, and about 4th grade. So I think that's roughly about 4th grade where these books cover. And then I'm covering some resources provided by the Smithsonian Institution's Museum of the American Indian. So that's what's going to be coming out on Fridays. Last month in October, I did movies. I'm doing the same in December and probably a few other months. But because, Native Americans aren't exactly very well represented in film, and I don't have the time to watch documentaries, let alone miniseries by Steven Spielberg, because I have a toddler, I'm covering these resources from the Smithsonian's Museum of the American Indian. So I'll give you the names of what I'm covering this month. So we'll be covering the books, The People Shall Continue, A Boy Called Slow, How the Robin Got Its Red Breast, and The Sweetest Calloo. Now, How the Robin Got Its Red Breast and The Sweetest Calloo are from tribes that are, the Sweetest Calloo is Inuit, so that's up in Alaska and the Northern Territories of Canada. And in the United States, they're not actually considered Native Americans. They're considered something else. They have a different status. And How the Robin Got Its Red Breast was covered is a story from a different group of First Nations people in British Columbia. And I'm not going to, I butchered their name enough in the review. I'm not going to do it here. The other ones, the People Shall Continue covers all natives. I believe the author is one of the tribes that are in the American Southwest, and then the illustrator of that book is of a tribe that's, I think, almost extinct. I think the Shawnee. She's part of the absentee Shawnee. So that's the illustrator of that book. And then A Boy Called Slow is written by members of the Lakota Sioux. And that's one of their stories. It's actually the origin story to Sitting Bull. So that's what that story is. So those are the books that I'm going to be covering. And that covers basically all the Mondays before the Christmas season officially starts in the US. And then I switch to Christmas stuff. The stuff you're going to be seeing on Fridays is, again, this is directly from the Smithsonian's Museum of the American Indian. There's 2 locations, one in DC, one in New York. But what I'm going to be covering from them, there is more than just these resources. I'm going to cover their online exhibitions, their information on Native American women, their information on food, and then their specific information on Thanksgiving. So those are what I'm going to be covering on the Fridays during this month. So this month is very much focused on the Native American experience, which I think is something that's very important. I plan to teach my daughter. I live in the American Southwest. There is a Native American tribe that's actually a combination of 2 within a half an hour drive of me. In fact, my husband worked for their public defender's office right around the time when we got married and before he moved to working in academic law. So he's familiar with that area. And again, there are multiple Native American tribes here in the American Southwest. So it's an important part of history. In fact, it's an important part of history in general. And it's a time where these people are making their voices known. Again, in fact, that's part of the author of the book that I'm going to be covering, The People Shall Continue. He's part of what's being called the Native American Renaissance or resurgence of some sort. In fact, where is that book? I'm mispronouncing things, and I'd rather not get them wrong. Here, there's the book. Let me grab it. So this is the book I'm talking about. Very good book. I do an entire review on it. But the author is, it is a Renaissance. It's being called the Native American Renaissance because they're bringing forth their culture again and letting it to be known to all people, which is, I think, a great thing. So I'm choosing to cover, and I specifically cover books that were written by Native people about their culture. And that is something that's important that I specifically went looking for. If I'm going to cover books written about a marginalized community, I want it to be written by members of that marginalized community, because otherwise you're going to run into trouble. And not to mention, there's not a lot of authors who write for those communities. So I think it's my duty, particularly if I want to support these people, to buy their books. And I do have them physically. I do try to buy some of the books physically, some I borrow from my library. But particularly when it comes to children's books, I buy things that are physical books. So I may be covering some that I'm renting from the library. That's just because my daughter's a little young for me to be buying some of this stuff right now. So, but typically that's what I gear toward. So that is what is going on in the month of November. I have a full bunch of fun stuff in December. I did some Halloween stuff in October. You can check that out. Mixture of classical ghost stories and stuff, as well as some children's stuff and some fun films. And then Harry Potter. Harry Potter started back in September, ran through October because, 7 books, 8 films. It took a while. So, and then I did, if you want to check out some of my other videos, I've done some sprinkling of various other children's book reviews, some homeschooling, secular homeschooling. This is a secular homeschooling channel to an extent, as well as some kids travel stuff in there. So that is what's going on in November. I'm doing the Native American stuff. If you would like and subscribe, you can look forward to the Native American stuff that I just described, some of my Christmas stuff. I'm covering food in January, and then both African American history and Asian American history come February. So that's what's going on here. So that is November. As I said, like and subscribe, and you can check everything out. Thank you.